Hi there. My name is Alex Shee, Managing Consultant within the Offensive Security team here at Netrix. Today, one of my colleagues and Senior Security Consultant Michael Ambrosia is going to give us a tech talk covering some of the offensive security techniques that we use when we're running pen test engagements with our clients. Michael's going to highlight some of the exploits that we've leveraged to identify security gaps with our client bases. Let's have a look.
Well, hello, everyone. Once again, my name is Michael Ambrosia. I'm one of the security consultants here alongside Anthony on our team. And yeah, I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about some of the other offensive security operations and engagement types that we do here within the team. So real quickly, offensive security often gets like many names and many different definitions. Two of the more popular ones are called red teams or red teaming, and then there's penetration testing. These are often kind of compared and questioned. So I wanted to take a moment just to highlight some of the differences between them because they are a little different. So first and foremost, on the red team side, a red team is kind of considered to be a adversary emulator. So they might emulate the tactics, techniques, and procedures, that's that TTP note there on that first bullet, related to maybe like a nation state or a cybercrime gang or something to that effect, to help kind of paint that picture to a client or within an environment. So they might emulate that attack method, that TTP. They mainly focus on evasion and persistence, being quiet and kind of low and slow methodologies. They demonstrate the impacts of successful attacks, and they evaluate defensive controls in targeted environments, ultimately testing the responsiveness of defensive controls, defensive actors, SOC teams, those sort of things, what we lovingly refer to as the blue team. A penetration test is a little bit different. Penetration testing primarily works to identify and exploit vulnerabilities that are found through various methods and tooling. This also focuses on vulnerability enumeration, making sure that we have a good oversight of what kind of systems we're dealing with, what kind of networks, and what kind of vulnerabilities exist within them, right? And that might also include human vulnerabilities. We'll touch on that a little bit as well. The idea is to demonstrate the impact of common attack vectors and things that are seen out in the wild so that we can help kind of articulate to clients and within engagements of, hey, this is something that we're actually seeing and this is something that we were able to do. So this becomes part of your threat landscape. And this is something that you'll have to keep in the back of your mind as you start to mature your program, mature your applications, whatever it might be. We evaluate defensive controls in the target environment. So we're looking for things like, hey, do you have any sort of filtering going on? Are there any protections, any countermeasures, things like that? That includes, antivirus, endpoint detection and response, all sorts of things like that. And we identify areas of strength and gaps within those environmental controls. Our team is really flexible in that we can act in accordance to either role, depending on the circumstance, the engagement, ultimately whatever the client or the circumstance kind of calls for. So here's a quick list of some of the services that our team provides and works on daily. Anthony's done an excellent job explaining the web, mobile, and API security bit of this, so really appreciate that. But I wanted to briefly highlight some of our other engagement types, such as the internal and external penetration tests, social engineering campaigns. You might be familiar with those as being phishing or vishing, as well as physical security testing. And mostly what happens in an engagement where all these kind of might be in scope, because it's an engagement type that we see pretty often. Just a quick note, the starred items at the bottom of the page are newer services that our team offers. If you have any questions about these, please feel free to reach out. We'd be happy to chat about them. There's some great opportunities for some pretty cool conversations about things around like ransomware assessments and purple team engagements and things like that. So we'll move on from here. So as I had said, we'll kind of talk about like what an engagement looks like in the event that we have, let's say it's an engagement of there's a phishing campaign or a social engineering element, and then that's going to nicely kind of step into like an external penetration test or an internal penetration test, et cetera. So in a social engineering engagement, we might work with a client to design a phishing engagement for our testing. This involves performing OSINT, or open source intelligence gathering, to obtain information about the organization. And this might be things such as names or email addresses of employees, email templates that we can pull from the marketing team or from the website, domain names, websites, critical services that exist out on the internet, like do they use Office 365? Do they use, Salesforce, things like that. So we'll work to gather that information from an outside perspective, and then once we're done, we'll work to use that in our testing. So in this case, we've cloned a purposely malicious site. So you can kind of see there in the phishing site 2 photo, that is our malicious site that kind of looks similar to that of like Office 365 or Outlook web mail. And we've created a phishing email that looks very similar to that of what the organization might release. And we will send that email out to everybody within the organization that we have an email address for, to try and get them to go to our site and kind of follow the prompts, and this might be a couple of different contexts. But ultimately what happens is when they land on these pages, if they insert information, if they don't necessarily do due diligence, or there's nothing that's compensating those controls, what might happen is they might be prompted to enter login information. And if we've done a good enough job, we might be able to capture that login information, those usernames, those passwords, things like that, which you'll see down there in the final screenshot of screenshot 3, where we've actually obtained a set of credentials from somebody within the organization. So we'll move on to the next slide. So through those earlier open source intelligence gatherings that we talked about, we might find information pertaining to company resources or services on the internet that are public. Like I said, Office 365, maybe like in this case, it's Citrix. So we'll find those pieces of information and we'll say, okay, now we have a set of credentials. Let's take those credentials that we know are good within the organization and start to see if we can get access to some of these resources. So in this case, we have a Citrix portal there. We take our credentials that we found as part of this engagement, and we try to leverage them to see, hey, can we log into that Citrix system and act like we're the user? Some of you might be thinking, hey, MFA, what if that's enabled? It's an amazing defensive measure, but it's not foolproof. If you're familiar with the Uber breach, MFA fatigue is a popular vector that's used in these campaigns, and that's where somebody just sends out a bunch of push notifications to the end user. Hey, accept this, click this, here's your 6-digit PIN, and just absolutely flood the user until the point of annoyance where they accidentally or maybe purposely click on the notification and say, yes, okay, just get this off my screen. Maybe it's a glitch, who knows? But that might be a bad actor on the other side, or a tester who's just waiting for them to click on that one piece of crucial information that allows us to get access to that system. And that's seen pretty commonly nowadays. So move on. So now, hey, we've got to a Citrix environment. That's pretty cool. If any of you are familiar with Citrix, you might know that you have Citrix published apps. And in this use case, we want to try to get access from that Citrix box that kind of lives out there on the internet into the internal network, right? Ultimately, we're trying to bridge that gap. So here, what we've done is we've gotten access to Citrix, and we're leveraging developer functions within Excel on the Citrix box to kind of bypass those controls and obtain server level access. So we've spun up a Visual Basic script inside Excel, and we've had it spawn a PowerShell session on the underlying machine, which lives on their network. And we have interactive access with that network medium now. So now we have a little bit more of a foothold on the internal environment, but we're not quite there yet, right? We've opened up the window, we're kind of inside the building, but now we're looking for the juicy bits. So we can move on. Once there, it's often a race to quickly elevate our privileges in order to gain as much access to the environment as possible. So in this example, we confirm our placement with the client on their network and say, hey, here's where we're at. Would you like us to continue? Double check rules of engagement, anything like that we have scoped out from an official medium. And then that's where we might work to perform additional attacks that give us greater power on the network, right? Maybe we're looking for domain admin or database admin or something like that. So in this case, what we're doing here is we're performing a Kerberos attack. So we're looking to attack the Windows Kerberos authentication process to gain access to hashed service account passwords or just hashed passwords in general, which will often, just by their way of being involved with this process, have elevated privileges, right? They might be an application admin, could be a domain admin, could be a help desk admin, could be something that just allows us to have more functionality on the network. In this case, we've captured the hash to what's called an ADFS or Active Directory Federated Services account. However, we have that hashed password. And if you're familiar with hash passwords, you know that's just kind of a jumbled up jargon of what the password could be. You can't really use it for too much. So what do we do from there? Now that we have that, we have a step-by-step process of performing password cracking, right? And this is kind of something that you might hear in the news or online, various websites, news editorials. So we'll often leverage our access to GPU accelerated password cracking appliances that we have to turn hashed passwords into plain text passwords. So we take that huge string of jargon that you see there, and we run it through a bunch of different tools and tool sets and different mathematical equations and password lists. And at the end of it, we get a pretty confident score of, hey, this password is, I don't know, let's just say password 123. Now we have that password, right? Just like the other user, now we can use it to our advantage. We have the username, we have the password, just like you might have to sign into your resources at work or at home. So now that we have that, we'll leverage that to be able to take those credentials and kind of what we call credential spraying across the network, right? We say, okay, we've got a set of credentials, we think they're higher privilege. Let's just go ahead and touch all the machines in the network with this particular set of credentials, and let's see if we get somewhere, right? Let's see if we can log in. Let's see if we can get access to underlying information beneath it. And that's what you see in that second screenshot there on the bottom, where what we're finding is, hey, this account that we popped, that we have now, can access these machines, and it turns out it's an admin on those machines. So maybe now we can get even more information, right? Maybe there's information in files on the desktop or in the My Documents, or maybe we just want more password hashes or something like that. We can start to do that. Maybe we want to create additional user accounts, or further solidify our foothold on the network. We have that ability to do that at that point, which is pretty cool. Moving on, but what if, kind of the earlier discussion, what if we do something on the physical side, right? Physical security. These days, our team sometimes finds opportunities to glean into a company's physical presence remotely across the internet. This could be due to like a poor configuration of a resource, or maybe a weak password or something. But as such, it allows us to gain access into things like the physical building layout, camera and sensor locations, network equipment details, such as like system names, makes and models, and sometimes even the occasional password on a sticky note, because let's be honest, who doesn't love those, right? So that way, if we're working with the client, we say, hey, we're going to go on site. Maybe this happens a day or two in advance, so that way, hey, we have a good idea of how to blend in. What's everyone wearing? Can we go in with a high-vis vest and a hard hat? Kind of have some information here. Maybe we know where there's a network switch where we can plug in a quick asset, or a Raspberry Pi or something like that. And now we have access to the network. Super interesting. Next page, please. And then when we're there, what does our boots on the ground operation looks like, right? We're often tasked with gaining access to secure spaces, networking closets, telecommunication rooms, things where resources responsible for allowing companies to work in kind of the modern age exist. This is where kind of, what we lovingly refer to as the secret spy gear sometimes comes out, which might allow us to circumvent a physical security control, such as like a door or a badge system, tools such as the under the door tool that you kind of see there on that leftmost photo, where we can be on the opposite side of a door and maybe it's locked from the outside but opens from the inside. We can kind of sneak a tool under there and get it up and pull down on that latch that allows us to open the door from the outside and get access to something on the other side, which, in the case of these screenshots, might be a network closet for an organization, and then who knows, we can plug things, we can, unplug things, we can look for sensitive files, paperwork, things like that. We might also have the ability to bring in like a badge cloner. And if we can find out, hey, the employees take their lunch break at this cafeteria or at the Starbucks, maybe we can work to have somebody in there with a badge cloner, where if we can get close enough to the person, maybe in a lunch line or, waiting for their order pickup, we can actually passively scan their badge and create a clone of it and be able to badge in and out of the building. These efforts are all done in order to find where there might be areas of gap in physical security presence, and allows for our team to report to the organizations on these areas of gap, and helps us to help them overcome those potential deficiencies, as well as increasing their security awareness, their focus, and things that they'll need to work on.